Hey, this is John Douglas, and you're watching Concerts That Made Us.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, concerts that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down, the greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
John Douglas, you're very welcome to Concerts That Made Us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Good to chat.
It's great to have you now. I'm looking forward to diving into your music over the next bit. Now, you released your debut solo record at the end of last year. After 35 years in the industry, why now for a solo record?
It just felt right. There was no particular big reason for it. It was just one of those things. There's a lot of things fell into place. I've been playing with the TrashCan Sinatras for 35 years. We are kind of friends since we're late teens, early 20s, and we come from the same town and similar backgrounds. So we've been making records for, as I say, 35 odd years. So that's very time consuming. It fills up the headspace, and it's very rewarding. We make great music together, and we enjoy each other's company. But of late, a couple of the guys live in America now, and the way the record industries went, it takes us a long time to make records, and a long time we don't really get together to go on the road much. And I kind of noticed I was missing that. And I've got a few friends that go out with acoustic guitars, some singer-songwriter friends of mine. And I looked at them and I looked at how their lifestyle was. They would travel light. It was just they could conjure up, the dynamics of a song just with the basics, with voice and guitar. And there was a lot of records I was listening to that were like that. The early Dylan records and Leonard Cohen things, where it's just a guy with a guitar or a woman, a person with an instrument. And I began to get sort of entranced by what you could do within those limitations. The way the world is these days making music, there's sort of no limitations. You've got the world at your fingertips, which can be quite paralyzing, to be honest. So to just strip it down to me and my voice and some people in the room was like a bit of a challenge. And it was like a tonic. It was like a refreshing thing. And I'm no spring chicken. So to do something refreshing and new and treat it like a bit of an apprenticeship has been very refreshing. Yeah.
I could imagine. What was the original vision you had for it, and how close do you think the final version is?
Well, the vision just came out of, I wasn't even planning on doing a record. I was just wanted to do some shows and see if I could survive in that environment. And I quite like setting the scene for a song, being a bit chatty about it. And it's not quite, I don't know, when you're in a touring band and it's a 5, 6 piece band, that may not be the kind of right place to sit and chat. You'll have a bunch of musicians twiddling their thumbs waiting for you to shut up kind of thing. But in an acoustic venue, it's almost kind of expected. But there's a bit of conversation and a bit of intimacy about, unveiling some of the secrets of the song or setting the scene for it, and that got quite appealing. So that was the shows. I was doing the shows, and then I realised people were asking me, "Can I buy a CD? Where do you get your stuff?" And I thought, "Oh, that's what I should do. I should go and record." And if I was going to record, just make the music like what the people just experienced at the show. A guy with a guitar and the material that I chose, it sort of really suited all that. And a few friends of mine said, I guarantee you by the time you've recorded your fifth song, you'll be wanting someone to come in and do a solo or whatever. So I saw that as a bit of a challenge as well, just to make sure that I stuck to the rules. And yeah, I didn't know how it would work out, but I was really pleased with how it worked out. The record's got a mood to it that starts goes all the way through it. But there's quite a bit of variety in the songs and the style of songs and the lyrical content. So there's enough variety within the mood to make it, a good listen. I'm very, very, very pleased with it.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any specific tracks on the record that maybe from a performance point of view you gravitate more towards?
Well, there's a song called Lost on there, which, first of all, I recorded all the songs in one night apart from one. I did them all in one night. I started at 7:30, finished at 11 o'clock, and the record was done, I thought. And then I was living with it, and one of the songs I preferred the demo version. I've got a
Right.
little room that I go to where I write songs, and sometimes songs just arrive. I'll just be playing away, literally, the words will start coming, and I'll have it recorded. And there was a song started arriving, and I pressed record, and I played it two or three times. And by the third or fourth time, I knew I'd got the lyric right, I'd got the mood right, and that's the recording that's on the record. So it's like literally within 20 minutes of the song arriving, there was this recording, and that's the first thing on the record. I got Mark to mix it, and make sure the sonics were as good as they could be. And it's because it's so sort of raw, and it's almost like as it was coming out of my mouth, it's ended up on the record. I just had to go with it. So that's got a bit of a special place on the record for me, that song.
I like it. I like it. Now, on October 1st, you're embarking on the Lost in North America tour. You'll be joined by Lily Vakili, I hope I'm saying that right, and Lauren Cav. Give us all the
Yeah.
details if you can.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I started doing shows in Britain and Scotland and Ireland, and the trash cans over the years they tour in America quite a lot. Now, an American agent noticed that I was doing shows, and she said, "You fancy coming over here and doing some?" And I thought, well, that'll be good to take it to a different audience, to a different place, different country, and see how it goes down there. And so I said yes. I've just been kind of saying yes to everything since I started doing this. So yeah, it was 3 weeks I'm going out for just before the election. So it'll be interesting to see what the country's like over there. And it's kind of up north, and it's autumn, so it'll probably be a bit chilly. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to taking this thing to a different audience. It's been a funny journey with it. As I say, when I started doing it, I decided to go, and the first shows I did were support slots with people who knew the audience would have no expectations, and that's been kind of most of the way. That's where I did all my learning stuff. I was playing in front of people I was just a guy with a guitar. They'd no concept of that I'd been making records with the trash cans for years. I was just a guy with an accent that was playing a guitar. So that was great. There was no pressures, and I could just be like that. I'm in a room, nobody knows me. What are the songs? How am I going to play them? So now I've played shows where people have been coming along that have heard my solo record, and they can expect some of that. But in America, there'll be a lot of people coming along that know the Trash Cans catalogue, so it'll be a slightly a different audience. But I can only give them the same show because I'm not like me on tour trying to represent the band. It's me doing this solo thing, which is different. It's got a different approach, and so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And just to travel is fun. And as I say, it's just before the election time out in the States, so it'll be interesting to see what it's like actually at the coalface over there.
Yeah, true, true. How will your solo stuff impact the trash cans going forward, or will it impact it at all? Is there room for both?
Well, oh, absolutely. I mean, as I say, trash cans have been going for a long, long time, and our big touring years are probably behind us. We've all got families. Some of us have got work commitments outside the band. A couple of the guys, as I say, live in America. The other guys live here. So it's quite expensive just to get us in the room. We can still make records, with the advent of the internet. We can send stuff over the web, and eventually we get to a place where we've got a bunch of songs, and we can record our stuff here. The guys can record over there. Sometimes they'll come across for a week or so and do some recording. So that's much easier to organise. But going on a tour means a lot of upheaval. So I'm guessing generally what happens when the Trash Cans bring out a record, which is probably every 4 or 5 years. There's big gaps. There's writing stuff's done. When the record gets released, we'll maybe do a couple of weeks of shows, because that's all the time we can devote to it with our lives and work commitments. So if I'm doing this, it'll run parallel, and they're all very supportive of me doing this. All the band are sort of cheering me on and wishing me all the best for it. And in fact, when I'm touring America, the first show is in Los Angeles. That's where Frank, the singer, lives. So he's going to come to the show and guest to do a few songs with me. And then I go up to Seattle. And that's where Paul, the guitar player, lives. And he's going to come to the show and play a few songs. And Frank's going to be at that one. So there'll be, if I'm in town, they'll come play a few songs. So yeah, it's all very sort of hefty. And, we're all wise enough to know that this, people are expressing themselves. It's good. It's good fun. And as I say, there's so much downtime for the trash cans. There's plenty of time for me to go and do this, and for both things to run parallel.
You have the best of both worlds. So, how has your approach to touring changed over the years, do you think?
I think probably in the early years I did a lot more partying than I would do now. And also there's a lot of nerves in the early days. There's probably a lot more drink and stuff just to calm you down and get normal to play a show. But these days, no, I'm very, very relaxed about the whole thing. The important thing is you play the show, and you conserve your energy for it. You try and keep healthy. You learn little tips like take a 4-way plug everywhere you go. We have quite a long lead, so if you're in a hotel, you can plug in your thing, and everything can be close to your bed. Travel as light as possible. Get all your paperwork right. I've kind of learned a lot of lessons over the years, and probably a lot better at it now. Can survive it a lot more.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's called Part 1, the tour. Part 1. Is there already a Part 2 booked and in the works?
Yeah, as I'm going for 3 weeks, and initially it was 5 weeks. This tour I'm starting in the kind of west coast in LA, and I'm going up to the top of the west and across the north, and then down to Philadelphia. So I'm not doing any of the southern stuff. And the agent basically said, by 3 weeks' time, you're going to start clashing with the election stuff. So you're best just wait. Don't do the south, and then come back next year and do the southern half. She said it's not so much the election. She says, and basically, in a couple of weeks before an American election, nobody really sells tickets. People their minds are far too focused on either being an activist or watching TV, or no one's really in the mood to go out and escape from it. They want to just be on the case with it. So I just took her advice and said, yeah, let's split it in two, and we'll come back and do the other 2 or 3 weeks next year. And it's probably better on the body actually to do 3 weeks rather than 5. So 5's a long haul.
Yeah, true. And besides ticket sales, what makes a good show for you or a good tour?
Oh, it's always it's always the audience reaction. You can play to 10 people, and if you've conjured up the stuff, you've had some interesting moments of connection. I chat a lot and people respond. It's just if there's like a good conversation, it should be like a good conversation, and you should be able to take people somewhere like on a bit of a journey. As I say, I've been around a long while, and some of these songs are written in various situations in life, and they reflect a lot of life. And to dwell on things and maybe the meatier subjects of life, like love and heartache and illness or death, as well as the lighter stuff. You try and cover a lot of ground in a show. I treat it like a good night out with good folks, and if you can get a good conversation going and memorable tales, and be sort of transported out of your life for a while. That's my kind of ideal night out. So hopefully it's got a flavour of that.
Hopefully. Sounds like a good night. Now, the podcast is called Concerts That Made Us. I know we've been talking about the tour, but we need to talk a bit more about concerts. First off, as a concert goer, what concerts would you say have made you?
Well, I thought about this the other day, and I think if I was to mention the most sort of affecting, exciting concerts, it was everything I went to when I was young. When I started probably going to concerts when I was 15, 16, 17. 15, 16. And I was brought up in a place called Irvine, which is a kind of small town 25 miles south of Glasgow. So Glasgow was the nearest place where any bands would come and play. So it meant you had to get the train up to Glasgow and you'd have to catch the last train back. So it was like a bit of a, sometimes I'd have to leave the shows early to go and get the train back home. And you're like a 14-year-old kid going up to the big city. It was quite nerve-wracking. And the
Yeah.
first shows I was to were things like the Clash and the Jam and the punk shows, So I remember one particular thing. I went up to see the Clash at the Glasgow Apollo, which is right in the centre of town on the main drag. And we got there about 7 o'clock, and there was a big queue outside, and the police had actually cordoned off the road because
Yeah.
punk rock had a sort of funny reputation back then. It wasn't about music. The society thought it was sort of violent. And it
Mm.
was nonsense. It was just kids having a good time. But the police had shut off the roads. There was this just big police horses. It was like very strange. And they were pulling kids out of the queue if they'd like a swear word on their jacket or something. So they'd missed the gig. But the actual shows were astounding. I'd only really known music as records. I didn't know what a gig was like. Suddenly I'm in this big hall and with the excitement of the band and the sheer volume of the thing. So all those shows are the things that really, really got me about music. Could really just blow your mind away, and your ears would be ringing for days. But you're just in this world that you really connect with, and the outside world was this confusing, fear-filled adult place where you got to do school and you got to get your shit together.
Yeah.
Music was a beautiful escape from that. So those shows were life changing. I've seen many brilliant shows afterwards. I love Bob Dylan, and I saw him last year, and it blew my mind. It was amazing. And I've seen lots of the bands of the day over the years, but those early shows of the Clash was probably the most exciting thing I've seen. Yeah, that era was very, very exciting.
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I'm hugely jealous that you got to experience that as it was new and fresh and happening,
Yeah,
It's incredible.
yeah, like 15-year-old, and that's the thing. And it was music of the street. It was music like I went to see the Jam, and he was probably the same age as me, and he was singing
Yeah.
about the lifestyle that I knew, the streets and the council houses and the street language.
Mm.
Whereas previously, when I first got into records, my brother had things, and it was like Dylan and also kind of, Genesis and stuff like that. And it was all kind of otherworldly stuff. Even Dylan, it was like America, and it was nothing you really knew. But suddenly there's these people that are just the same age as me and are talking the language I know, and they're up on a stage and they've got a guitar, and it's exciting. They're
Yeah.
very, 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 I'm very lucky to have that. I realise now how rare that is.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And your own shows then. If you think of all the shows you've played over your entire career, is there one that sits above the rest? It just couldn't have got any better.
Um, yeah, there's things that are very memorable. When me and the boys in the band we come from a small town, we play shows in the local area, and you're always like, that's kind of quite scary. Your peers are judging you, and it's all like, God, you're worried about how you look or whatever. And then we got a record deal, and we started putting out records in the UK. And we started getting support slots and going around the country. And it was a bit of a slog initially. It was very similar. You'd be down in like Leeds or up in Aberdeen, and people would be like, okay, impresses, what you guys about, and you'd gain some fans, but it's like a trial. You're like it's a bit of a slog. And then we got a call from the record company saying that our first record was getting played in the States and America, and people were buying it. So we got asked to go to America. And suddenly we were playing rooms where everybody knew every word of every song. And they were, enraptured for it because we were these exotic sounding creatures coming to town and playing this music that they knew inside out. So suddenly we were in this place where it was like, a genuine connection, nothing to do with the record type or if you're cool or whatever. It was just people going, I know every word to that. You spoke. I love that song. It meant this to me. So it's like an authenticity straight away, and you're like, oh, but that's what I remember when I was a kid. fantastic. And on that tour, one of the last shows we did was in CBGB's in New York, which is, if you're an old punk like me, that's a kind of iconic venue. It's no
Yeah.
longer there. Well, a lot of the early American punk bands started out in that venue. It was a toilet, it was a den. It was a den, it was terrible. But this aura and this kind of atmosphere of, this is one of the places where things changed and things got better. So to play there, I remember staring out. We're playing a song, and I looked out. It was a very multicultural audience. All the kind of nationalities of the day were reflected. So it was like, wow, we're in this melting pot of a city, coming from small town Scotland, and these people are loving our songs, and they're not, there's nothing sort of hype about it. They're off in various places and various things. So it was, that was a very memorable show at CPGB's for us young guys.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man. And here's a fun one. The opposite then. We'll switch that around. Is there any show that you would say is the worst, and how did you overcome it?
We played many shows that were worse. There was a thing we played in Spain. We got asked to go and do a festival in Spain, and we thought, that sounds fun. And it was a long day driving, and then we realised that we were actually, I don't know if this is the norm out there, but we were supposed to go on at like 1:30 in the morning.
Right.
And we were like, what we're going to do time. And then the headlining band, who were, there was a band called Elastica that had some hits in England. And it was one of them. They did this different act, and they were the headlining act, and they were supposed to go on at 3. And they were fronted by this girl. And she came into us and she was in tears. She was saying, can we please swap stage times so that we go on earlier and you go on later, because I have to get home because there's trouble with my fella. This big sob story. And we were like, oh, sure, whatever it is, fine. So we ended up going on at 3 in the morning, and we were young guys. So we'd sort of, we got thirsty hanging around to 3 in the morning. So we were a total mess when we went on to play, and there wasn't that many people hanging around. So it was the whole thing was just a bit of a downer. But that was good. I mean, actually, we played. I'm pretty sure we'd have played all right, but we tried to be the nice guys, and it turned out it was a bit of a disaster. But there's not been any real bad shows. That's as bad as it got. Being a bit drunk. And,
yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. No one fell off stage or anything like that.
None of that. No, none of that. Absolutely none of that. Thank God. Fingers crossed, touch wood. Yeah,
Exactly. And when it comes to showtime these days, what's your pre-show and post-show? How do you psych yourself up? And then afterwards, how do you like to wind down?
Pre-show, I try and usually a show starts about maybe 8 o'clock, and I try and have something to eat about 4. And that would be me for the night as far as food goes. And then I'm very relaxed. I'll maybe wander around. I like to brush my teeth just before I go play, just so my mouth is a bit fresh. I don't have any superstition stuff or anything like that. Sometimes I'll go into the hall and just sit at the back for a while, maybe watch the opening act and just get a feel for the room and see what it looks like from out there. And that's quite a relaxing thing as well. And then just make sure I've got everything set, just I know what I'm doing, and that's basically it. After a show, I like to go and chat to people and get a flavour of where I am, who's coming along to the show, what does it mean to them, what brought them in, what is it like where they live, how's life like here, whatever it is. I just kind of get a lot of times when you're touring, you're in and out of a town and you don't really get to know it.
Yeah.
You don't get much to see. So that's the one window where I've found it's actually good. You get a good sense of place if you get a chat to a bunch of people afterwards. It's been tough after the COVID thing. You get concerns about that, whether germs are going around. But I've been lucky with that so far. And that's generally the post-show thing. And when I get back to wherever it is I'm staying, I'm generally quite good at getting to sleep. And back in the old days, it'd be nervous energy after the show and partying to 4 in the morning, and just having a riot. But we don't do not so much.
Oh man. And at this stage in your career, when you look back, you've achieved so much. Is there anything left on your bucket list? Anything you'd like to achieve?
No, I mean, I don't. I've never really looked at it as a journey to anywhere. It's just a thing where it's just an ongoing process that's very enjoyable. As long as I can keep my health together and keep writing songs. I mean, that's the major thing is writing songs and go and playing them to folk. That's the kind of next step. Make sure that, you're writing songs for that arena. That's where the songs are for. They're for in a room. Here's my guitar, and folk listen to them. If they bought the record, they know them, and they connect with it already. So if I can keep doing that, that's the kind of main thing. I'd like to travel a bit more. There's a lot of Europe. I haven't played shows. That'd be fun to see a lot of that. Well, yeah, keeping busy with the music is the major. That's all. I've won already. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, true, true. Before we dive into the last couple of questions, then future plans that are set in stone. Any Europe dates or any new music coming you can share with us?
Yeah, in fact, the other day I just announced that I've got a little 4-track EP coming out in a couple of weeks. It'll be on. You can download it just now, actually. If you go to my Facebook and all that stuff, there's details of where to get it. And I'm planning on doing another acoustic record or another solo record for next year. Today I've been in the studio with the TrashCans. This is the third day of recording, and of this bunch of recording. We think we'll have an album to come out next year at some point as well. That's very close to being ready to mix. So that's the concrete stuff. The concrete thing is a single, an EP that's out within weeks, and then the other things are planned for next year will be a Trash Cans record and another solo record for me.
I like it. Exciting times ahead. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll dive into the last couple. So there are a couple of fun random ones. First off,
Okay.
besides music, what are you currently obsessed with?
Besides music, I'm currently obsessed with. I listen to podcasts quite a lot. I like your man, Blind Boy.
Mm.
He's a very interesting character. Me and my wife, we started listening to the Rubber Bandits maybe about 15 years ago. I love with the sense of humour and the intelligence that went with it. And just kind of followed him for a while as a really interesting character. And then he started doing these podcasts, and they're fantastic. Both myself and my wife have got family from Ireland. I've got family in Connemara, and she's got family in Tralee. So it's always been a kind of place where we've been interested in the culture of it and the sort of history and folklore of it. And they had a guy. In fact, the last thing I was listening to was your man, Blind Boy. It was chatting to Mangan. Is it Michael Mangan? I can't remember his full name, but he's like a folklorist, and he knows like the history of the place names in Ireland, and he goes on about that. That basically, the old place names and what they mean, and the folklore behind a lot of what the countryside means, and I'm kind of interested in all that, the sort of ancient stuff that doesn't really get covered by historians. I'm interested in that side of the past. And somehow in Scotland was quite industrialised, and a lot of that stuff got wiped out. And I've got family that goes back generations in Scotland, but in Ireland I've got family that goes back generations, and it's treasured and it's documented. And I've still got people over and meet, and they tell me about my granddad and my great granddad, and there's music in the family, and here's a tune that he got, and here's a story about him. And in fact, the other day I remembered the story. I had quite bad toothache for a couple of days, so I went to the dentist, and I don't like going to the dentist, and it reminded me of a story that one of my Irish relatives told me about my great uncle, who was a singer. His name was Colin Keane, from Glinsk in Connemara, and he was quite a famous. He knew Seamus Innes. He was very friendly with Seamus Innes, and so there's a lot of documented stuff. And one of the stories was he'd a bad tooth, and they stay in quite rural. Glinsk is quite rural. It's quite far away from Clifton and quite far away from Galway, so it was a trek to go to the dentist. But the whole family was going, you need to go, you need to go. And he was so reticent, and they said, what is it? It's not the distance, it's not that. And he says, oh, I'm scared in case it's the tooth with the music in it that they take out. And I just thought, what a wonderful story, these guys. And it's true, I mean, if you get teeth out, it does change the shape of your mouth. But I thought that's a great name for a record, the tooth with the music in it.
Yeah, actually.
I'm fascinated.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that myself. I'm surprised to say or to hear you say that it's not as prevalent in Scotland. I always assumed Scotland was very similar to Ireland and with your culture and
Okay.
folklore.
It's very similar in a lot of ways, but I think, I mean, there was clearances here, and there's been just, the education system over the years very UK English based. When I was at school, 70s, they didn't teach you about Scottish history, but there's been an awakening over the past maybe 30 years where people have started to realise that, wait a minute, there's a lot more history here you know than what the UK, the culture tells us. So whereas in Ireland it's always been very open and very sort of embraced. I don't know whether healthily so. Maybe at times it was too dwelt on. I don't know. But nowadays it seems as though there's a lot of people that are interested in it, and there's just a lot of recorded stuff and maybe stuff that's word of mouth. But in the 30s and 40s, a lot of stuff was recorded, and maybe it's because it's so rural as well. Things could survive over. I think out in the Western Isles in Scotland, you've got things surviving.
Aye.
Languages, song are surviving. But overall, it's if I was to compare the two, I'd say the Irish society and the Irish sort of government and culture is a lot better at keeping, at being interested in it and making sure people know it. Here, it's kind of a new thing
Yeah,
for it to be governmentally funded, that side of things. But it's definitely on a good trajectory. It's getting better, a lot better.
all right, good,
It used to
good.
be weird talking about being Scottish. It used to be weird when I was growing up. The image of Scotland was like guys getting drunk or guys talking in comedy programs where it was the guy in the kilt.
Mm,
Scottish was just joke. They're similar with the way the Irish people were treated in the 70s. It was a sort of joke caricature.
yeah,
So the journey from there is a vast improvement. There's a lot of people standing up and being quite proud of Scottish, and the breadth of it is same as any other nation. We're smart as anybody else.
very true, very true. The next question, it's a bit odd. If you had to spend 24 hours locked in a room with any musician from history, who would it be?
Any musician from history, I'd probably go. Who do I like? I'd like to sit in a room with Tom Waits.
Ah,
He's a good storyteller and he's a fantastic musician. I like the instrumentation he uses, and he's got a similar sort of fascination with the past, but not in a kind of reverential way. And he can spin a yarn. He'd keep me entertained. Bob Dylan would be great. I don't know if I'd get much out of him.
mm.
He doesn't seem to. But I think Tom Waits, he'd be a lot of fun, and I think we'd get on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true,
Tom Waits.
true. I like it. I like it. The final question. What's your go-to album? An album you constantly revisit?
Oh, there's two or three. There's a record Frank Sinatra made, and the album's called Francis Albert Sinatra with Juan Carlos Jobim. That's the name of the record. It's sort of late '60s record. Jobim is a guitar player, songwriter, arranger from South America. The style he plays is the most famous song would be "The Girl from Ipanema." But this record, it's Sinatra with this guy and his band, and a lot of sort of classic American songs, but they're played in a sort of soft bossa nova style. And Sinatra's singing very soft, and he's chosen beautiful lyrics to sing. And it's got this gorgeous soft mood of classic songs. That's a cracking record, and it's not very well known out of Sinatra's catalogue, but it's got no big brash things on it. There's no sort of humour on it. So it's kind of a heartbreak record. But it's just a beautiful piece of work. It's like nothing else. There's no other record like it. So that's one. And there's another. There's Scott Walker is another of my favourite singers, and he made a bunch of records in the late '60s called Scott One, Scott Two, Scott Three, and Scott Four. And Scott Three and Scott Four are they're timeless records. He's a kind of guy that was. How would you describe it? He uses a lot of the instrumentation of the old crooners. He uses orchestras, and but it's kind of married with a '60s songwriting look at music. It's got kind of very avant-garde lyrics and very strange arrangements, almost psychedelic at times. and he's got this voice which is like the beautiful baritone. So it's a very strange mix. His lyrics can put a lot of people off because he does it in his own individual way, and he's got no thought for what anyone else is doing or saying or how they're hearing him. It's just a very very selfish, selfish. But I love it. When somebody just plows their own furrow and doesn't give a shit what anybody else is doing, and because he's using that unusual palette of orchestration with a little bit of electronic guitar at the time, very unusual records. They didn't sell at the time, and they were out of print for ages. I couldn't get a hold of them forever. But yeah, Scott 3 and Scott 4. Yeah, that's the 3 records I'm going about.
Very good, very good. I'm not too familiar with him, but I'm itching to check him out now. They sound very, very interesting.
Yeah, but I don't know if you know Jacques Brel was a songwriter coming out of France in like the late 60s, and very street music. It's all in French, but the translations. Scott Walker was a big fan of his. It's hard to describe his music. But buy Scott 3 and see what you think. That's a good entry.
I'll have to.
Yeah, or listen on Spotify. You don't have to buy anything these days.
True. Listen, John, this has been absolutely fascinating now. Thanks a million.
A pleasure. Thanks for the chat. Pleasure to talk.
Welcome to the podcast, conscience that made us, interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.